Miami Dolphins fans, welcome to another rough Monday afternoon while we sit here and we go through another failed season. And you're looking at me and you're wondering, why is this guy kind of half smiling? Why is he so even keeled? Why is he able to talk about this team and their endless miring and mediocrity? Why is he able to sit here with a straight face and tell it like it is and keep it objective and keep it logical? Why isn't he in mourning? Why aren't I wearing my emo hoodie and fading into obscurity because the Dolphins lost? Why am I not in grieving mode? Well, I'll tell you guys why. And it was funny because a lot of people that rock with me, and Lucci did it, and it's all fun and games, and obviously, it made for good radio and it made for good YouTube content. But when people were joking around and kind of clowning on me for being emo the weekend that we lost to the Titans and for not being around and checking out and just being in my feelings that week where we lost to the Titans, that was because, look, I've been around this team long enough. I understand scheduling. I understand momentum. I understand different teams in this league and the way things go well enough that I'm able to ascertain much earlier and way ahead of the curve as opposed to some other fans and some other people. I'm able to ascertain much earlier where the season's going. So the reason that I'm even keeled today and the reason I can talk to you today with a straight face and the sun came up here in North Jersey and the sun came up over New York City and I'm able to talk to you and be okay, it's because I already grieved this season. That week where we lost to Tennessee and Buffalo beat KC and I went into grieving, that was because when we lost to Tennessee and the way we lost to Tennessee, coupled with the Bills coming away with a pivotal victory against the Chiefs, already gave me every inclination, every inkling, every bit of foresight that I needed to predict how this season would end. And so I already mourned the loss of this season. I already mourned the Dolphins losing the division. I mourned it weeks ago. Now, you could call me a fair weather fan. You could say I give up too early. You could say all that if you want. But being blindly optimistic does not give you or make you a better fan. Being blindly optimistic does not make you a better analyst. It doesn't make you more, give you a more viable opinion on these platforms. You can call me negative all you want, but I knew where this season was headed weeks ago. And I'm sorry to say, I was right. I was right. And guys, if you're in here, click the like button, click the subscribe button if you haven't done so yet. A bunch of new subscribers. We welcome you all to Fury Fam. If you haven't noticed, we are back in action. We are monetized. We are accepting donations. It takes a lot of work to do this. I'm going to do a Monday podcast all off season. It's going to be available on every major podcasting platform. So if you type in Phin-Addict Fury in Google or any major podcasting platform, you'll find the audio version of this Monday show. Every week, we'll be doing it all off season. So if you want to help us stay afloat and you want to help us continue to expand, click the super chat button. You'll jump the line. I'll address you directly. Click the subscribe button and become a member. We have 3 membership levels. Become a member on an ongoing monthly basis. You'll be supporting the channel and helping us to continue to bring you more and more content. The reason I'm able to come on Mondays now and spread the content to an audio podcast platform is because of the support of you guys, because we are remonetized. So become a member, click the super chat, click the super thanks, and let's roll and join Fury Fam. But we see in the chat here, an AFC East champion says, does that mean that the offseason starts a week from today? Look, logically, I knew going into this game that we were probably going to lose this game, okay? And I'm going into next week the same way. I logically think we're going to lose to Kansas City. I haven't seen this team win against a good team on the road really since last season, the beginning of last season. And I have little faith that this team is going to go into a cold, hostile environment and pull out a victory, especially with all the injuries, especially with how we've been playing as of late. But back to what I said, I mourned the end of this season when we lost to the Titans. And it wasn't just that we lost to the Titans, right? It was that it was a unique confluence of issues that helped us to lose to the Titans. Our offense couldn't move the ball when we needed to seal the victory. And the defense couldn't hold Tennessee to just one touchdown in the final 3 minutes of the game. Okay? Anthony, what up? Everybody, what up? Mike, what up? Joseph, what up? Fury Fam is in the building. Super chats are open. Click subscribe. Let's go. Let's go on this Therapy Monday. Therapy Monday. So I knew that we weren't going to be able to play complimentary football. Now, the fact of the matter is nobody wants to hear this. We've had a lot of injuries down the stretch, and that was part of the reason I was in mourning a couple weeks ago, right? But despite our injuries last night, injuries are not the reason we lost the game to the Bills. We might have a ton of injuries, but blaming injuries for this is just a nonsensical excuse. Now, I'm telling you right now, just like I told you on my rant yesterday, I'm telling you right now that people are still going to blame injuries. Give it a couple weeks, and the same old people with the same old narratives and the same old fan base is going to come out with the same old story, and they're going to start saying, just like they did last year it was, Tua had concussions. If Tua stayed healthy, and if Tua stays healthy next year, we're going to make a run. Well, this year, Tua stayed healthy, but several other guys went down. So the narrative is going to be going forward. We already know the narrative is going to be, well, if we just keep our guys healthy, if we don't have so many key injuries next year, if we stay healthy next year, by and large, next year, we're going to make a run. But that narrative is absolute nonsense. I'm telling you right now, it's the same absolute nonsense that we pulled last year, and it's the same nonsense we're going to pull next year. The true problem with this team is not that we face injuries. And by the way, everybody faces injuries. The true nonsense with this team and what's holding this team back is that we fail to perform at the end of the season in clutch situations. Something in the DNA, something in the cultural DNA of this franchise is preventing it from rising to the occasion at the end of the season. And there's a few things that go into that, which I'll be breaking down and going into today. But injuries are not the only reason. By the way, the Bills had several key injuries. Their number 2 receiver, Gabe Davis, went down in the middle of the game, and they still managed to win. They lost defensive players in the middle of the game, and they still managed to win. They came into the game with key injuries, and they still managed to win. You have the Cleveland Browns out here with Joe Flacco at quarterback, and they're managing to win. And my biggest thing is that you think we were going to lose because our defense was banged up. Most of our key injuries were on defense. Now, I understand Mostert and Waddle were out, but we got Robert Hunt back. And we still had a myriad of playmakers on offense. And Achane filled in for Mostert quite well. The kid is absolutely electric. He's running for a bunch of yards per clip. He's doing quite well. Devon Achane rushing 10 yards for 56, 5.6 yards per carry, and a touchdown. Okay? So the defense had the injuries, but the offense is what lost the game. The defense played their heart out. Anthony, thank you for the donation. First super chat of the day. Anthony in the building, showing love and showing support for the Monday podcast. He says, so where are we with Tua right now? Are you done with him? Anthony, that's a great question. And because you're laid off the beautiful super chat, thank you very much. I'm going to spend some time answering it. I am done with the debate about Tua. I am done with the debate about Tua and whether he is this great quarterback. Because objectively, realistically, what we have out there, what we know, is that Tua is a very good statistical quarterback in the regular season, and that most of those stats come against lower tier competition, and most of those stats come in the beginning of the season, in September and October and November sometimes. But we know that when it comes to playing really good teams in crunch situations towards the end of a season on the road, when adversity is high, when you need to be a difference maker, when things around you are crumbling, when you have the ball in your hands to win and you want to be a difference maker, Tua is not even near the top 5 of the league. He's on the bottom half of the league in those situations. So to answer your question, Anthony, I can't be done with Tua in terms of as a Dolphins fan, because the cold, hard reality is that Tua is the quarterback next year. His stats are too good. The promise of what he could be with those stats and with those abilities is too high for the Dolphins to part ways with him. But to answer your question a little bit more in a complex way, I'm done with him as far as expecting to make a Super Bowl run with the current iteration of this Miami Dolphins team. I'm done thinking that Tua and McDaniel and this current iteration and this current philosophy and this current system is going to get us to the promised land is going to get us to a Super Bowl, Anthony, to answer your question. So I'm done with the debate, and I'm done having hope that we're going where we want to go. And thank you again for the donation, sir. And MJW says, is it me or did Tua look scared in those final minutes? I'm going to tell you something. The defense was banged up. They lost both pass rushers. Then they lost another depth pass rusher. They're lining up Melvin Ingram, who was sitting on the couch most of this season. AVG goes out, and it's Agba and Ingram out there because the defense is so smacked to death. Xavier Howard isn't playing. Baker comes back. That was a help. But then Deshaun Elliott goes out in pre-game warmups with a leg strain. He has a heating pad. He tries to play. He plays a little bit. He gets a pick. Javon Holland gets hurt again. He's going out, and you got Rashad Jones, who, by the way, despite taking out Baker on one of the plays and hurting X's hip, let's give it up for him. Let's give it up for Brandon Jones coming in, laying the wood on players and making plays. The defense was banged up. The defensive injuries were the reason we thought we couldn't make a run, yet the defense created multiple turnovers. The defense made a clutch 4th down and short stop on a quarterback who's one of the best quarterbacks in the league at getting tough yardage with his legs. The banged up, gimpy, beaten down, adversity-facing defense put us in position time after time to seal this game and end this game. And I understand that there were some fluke plays in there, but it doesn't matter when at the end of the day, Buffalo didn't score. Yeah, Jalen Ramsey got burned on a play, but guess what? The pass didn't make it into the receiver's hands. Yeah, Josh Allen threw some ill-advised balls, and we came up with the interception. How many times the defenses drop easy interceptions? How many times the balls go through their hands? Not to mention that a direct reason why Josh Allen was struggling earlier in the game is because our defense was doing a good job of containing him running the ball. And even guys like Apple are coming out and making interceptions. And at the end of the game, this is the same thing that happened in Tennessee. In Tennessee, the only reason we were even ahead in that game at the end was because the defense came up with a fumble. I understand Tennessee screwed up, but that's what teams like Tennessee are going to do. Came up with a fumble and gave the offense short fields on 2 occasions. And at the end of the game, they let up a touchdown, and the offense had the ball in their hands, and all they had to do was kill the Titans and end the game and kill the clock, and they failed to do so. And in this game against Buffalo, this banged up, barely alive, left for dead, disheveled defense came up with a critical stop at the end of the game on 4th and 2. And that wasn't the only critical stop they came up with. And our offense, our vaunted quarterback offense and supposedly genius coach failed with a minute 40 something left in the game, through not just failed on downs, not just failed because of penalties, but through an ill-advised interception to end the game. And we've seen this before. We've seen this so many times. Lucci in the building. Thank you for the donation, sir. Keeping it going. Thank you for the donation. Lucci says, pay Christian Wilkins, not Tua. And I've seen this debate going on. I saw this debate go on this channel last Thursday in the happy hour, where Lucci's taking up the mantle for Christian Wilkins, and other people are saying, he's a bum, let him walk. I've long been on the side of Christian Wilkins. And at this point, yeah, he was invisible against Baltimore, but who wasn't? You know who was not invisible yesterday against the Buffalo Bills with the division title on the line? Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins was wreaking absolute havoc in the middle of that defensive front. Christian Wilkins is ripping the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. These defensive players, including Wilkins, this is a guy, Josh Allen, who's one of the most elusive quarterbacks in the National Football League, and these guys were wrapping him up and sacking him. Usually, that's almost impossible to see these guys do. And these guys were wrapping Josh Allen up and bringing him down. Yet this offense couldn't get it done. This offense scored 0 points. This offense scored 0 points the entire second half. The entire second half. That's unacceptable. And somebody asked before, thank you again for the donation, my brother. Super chats are open. Subscriptions are open. Click subscribe. Become a member today. There's 3 different levels to become a member. Join Fury Fam. Let's help this objective, balanced, rational channel grow. I appreciate all the support of everybody out there. Now, I thought it was interesting when we came out against Buffalo. Mike McDaniel had an interesting play call where he was kind of getting the entire defense and offense flowing in one direction and pitching the ball to Devon Achane going the opposite direction against the grain. And at that point, he really only has 1 or 2 guys to beat. And Achane is so elusive and so good at finding holes that it was working. And I give McDaniel credit for that. But here's what I've been recognizing and realizing about our coach, Mike McDaniel, as of recent. And Yearly, man, thanks for being a part of us right now. Make sure you hit subscribe. Make sure you support. Welcome to Fury Fam. And Phil, one of the members, executive table member, welcome back, my brother. He says, I've officially given up on Tua. Mike McDaniel is next. So the executive table has spoken, and I'm hearing you here. But here's what I've noticed about Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel is very good at scripting plays and scripting offensive game plans before a game starts. Many times you'll see a team and you'll think, what's the best way to attack this defense? If we were going to attack a defense like this, how would we do it? Given our last game and how a defense attacked us and the tape that this team has on us, how can we counter that? Mike McDaniel has a good plan going in to most games. And early in the games, you usually see these plans come to fruition. Not always, but many times you look at the offensive play calls and it's a good punch to the team we're going against. The problem is that once that defensive team settles in, once they adjust, Mike McDaniel seems like he completely runs out of answers. He completely is no longer innovative. That genius edge that we think he has seems to evaporate once the teams settle in, and against good defensive teams that are resilient and that continue to find ways to adjust to our game plan, he has no answers. I don't understand how that play was working for the majority of the first half, and then we start running it to where the offense and defense are flowing. And then we get too cocky with it, and we continue to try to get Achane out in space toward the teeth of the defense, and he's going down for 4-yard losses. We ran a trick play where Achane was looking to go out wide and then throw the ball early in the game when we have a division title on the line and we have no reason to start resorting to trick plays. And then what we have is a quarterback and a play caller who seem to want to force everything into Tyreek Hill at any given moment. It just seems like whether there's 3 guys on Tyreek, 2 guys on Tyreek, whether Tyreek is hobbled, whether Tyreek is not in the best physical position to make a catch because he's hobbled on his ankle and he's not the tallest and biggest receiver, it doesn't matter. And Papa Hog, what's good, my brother? It doesn't matter. We seem to be forcing the ball into Tyreek Hill every time. And it's evident that we struggle to have other options on that offense. Now, is Jalen Waddle, now you got to understand, Jalen Waddle being out and Raheem Mostert being out is a considerable issue, because if you pay attention, the base offense does a lot of times have Waddle and Tyreek, and it also has Mostert and Achane in there. Not all the time, but the base offense does have both backs at the same time. And that creates a lot of mismatches. That creates a lot of, smoke and mirrors in terms of motions and pre-snap reads for the defense, which opens things up both in the passing game and in the running game and just in general. So having Mostert and Waddle out certainly hampers our offense and hampers the game that we want to call, and it hampers McDaniel's game plan. However, we still have weapons on this team. How about River Craycraft, who last year was a potent weapon, who this game has a beautiful catch on a slant and for a first down early in the game, and then he disappears completely from the game plan. You don't see him at all after that. Chase Claypool, who we bring in precisely for depth and for end of the season scenarios like this, where we're hindered in the wide receiver room and we desperately need to find playmakers on offense to give us some kind of spark, is mainly absent from the game plan, has had a couple targets in the last 2 games, but has essentially been mostly a non-factor. Durham Smythe, who last week and against Dallas had been looking like he was racking up some targets and some yards as of recent, was absolutely disappeared and vanished from the game this week. That's on offensive play calling, offensive game planning, and that's on quarterback play. And somebody asked before if they thought that I thought Tua got scared or looked scared. And I will say this. It seems like the offensive philosophy that has been installed since Mike McDaniel has gotten here is to train Tua that by the time he hits his back step and his drop, he should be releasing the ball. That mitigates offensive line play if it's spotty. That utilizes Tua's best talents, which are looking off defensive players and anticipatory throwing, and his accuracy with the speed of our receivers. And what I find that looks to be happening with Tua right now is Tua seems to be very rattled the more time he has. Essentially, if he hits his back foot and the primary or secondary read is not available, or the defense is not doing what he had read pre-snap or what he had expected from studying in the film room, what we're seeing is Tua starts to get frazzled. And whether he has time or not, he starts to look really disheveled and discombobulated. You see him start to shuffle his legs oddly. You see him start to get lost in the pocket and lose his feel for the pocket. And then you see him a lot of times, even if a guy winds up coming open, he doesn't make the right throw to the guy and land it in his chest. He makes an errant throw at the turf or too high or into the sidelines. It seems like if Tua's timing isn't there on a given play, he gets completely frazzled and disheveled, and that's an absolute problem. I don't think it's any one thing. I don't think if it's if he sees pressure. I don't think it's, if he's rushed from one side or the other. I just think this offense is completely built on timing, which maximizes Tua's abilities the most, minimizes his limitations the most, and when that timing falls apart, Tua doesn't have any answers and he gets completely frazzled. That's why he's not, you always hear these things about Tua being off schedule, not being able to make plays off schedule. Well, I think it's more, partly about athleticism and whatnot, but more mental. It's more this offense is completely built on timing with a few primary targets and a few ways that pre-snap we look to throw defenses off and make pre-snap reads. And if those pre-snap reads aren't there in time, Tua does worse. Because if you look at some of the statistics and all these guys that are big on statistics, if you look at these statistics, you'll see that the more time Tua has and the more time Tua takes, the less efficient Tua is. So he relies completely on timing, and defenses that have been successful against this team have successfully thwarted timing. That doesn't mean everybody's covered, because when you throw into triple and double coverage consistently like Tua does, and many times early in the season he got lucky and he still completed those passes, but many other times he wasn't as lucky and those passes were either broken up or wound up as turnovers. When you're throwing into double and triple coverage, there's somebody else out in that pass pattern that's open or in single coverage with a chance to be open. And the fact is that if we're throwing into triple and double coverage, we're missing an open guy somewhere else on the field. And that is another issue, that when you're using this timing pre-read offense, you're going to not be able to make plays off schedule. When you get to the more formidable defenses late in the season, you're going to struggle. And that's what happened with this team. So team stats, Buffalo outgained us 473 yards to 275 yards, 345 passing yards for Buffalo, only 167 passing yards for the Dolphins, 128 rushing yards for Buffalo, 108 for Miami. So clearly rushing has done well for us as of recent. They were averaging 6.1 yards per rush play. We were averaging 5.7. They had 26 first downs. We had 16. They were 9 of 15 on third down. We were 4 of 10. They were 1 of 3 on fourth. We were 0 for 0. Total plays, they had 77. We had 48. Sacks allowed. We had 3 sacks. Buffalo only had 1. Buffalo punted once. We punted 5 times. The turnover ratio was 3-2, but if you count turnovers on downs, which also count as turnovers, we were 5-2 in turnover ratio, yet we still lost. Now, the glaring issue here is obviously the special teams play that brought Buffalo into a tie and completely changed momentum, which, if you're a Dolphins fan who has any experience watching this team, you knew that was coming. You knew we couldn't sit there and punt the ball every time and continuously not capitalize on turnovers and win this game. You were waiting for some kind of play like that punt return to happen, and as soon as that punt return happened, you knew what was coming, and what was coming came to fruition, and we all bore witness to it, did we not? Did we not? But look at those stats I just read you, and here's what the interesting point of those stats is. Here's why I brought those stats up. Because we can sit here all day and say, we had injuries, special teams gave up a touchdown, which is unacceptable, and there's no reason Crossman should be here next year. Special teams needs a complete overhaul. We probably should upgrade punter, we need to upgrade coach, and we need to solidify our special teams units. That's for sure. But if you look at the actual stats of the game, you will see that despite our defense being injured, they came up with turnovers and stops at key times. They were certainly bend but don't break. And that's all you can hope for a defense that has that many glaring injuries. They were bend but don't break. They only allowed 14 points. One of the touchdowns was on a special teams play. Our defense only allowed 14 points for Buffalo. But what you will see in those stats is that our offense was vastly, vastly outplayed. Our offense was pedestrian at the very best. Our offense was extremely underwhelming and extremely ineffective. Plain and simple. And the fact is that despite all the glitz and glamour and all the numbers and all the stats early in the season, just like last year, you had inflated stats because of that comeback against Baltimore, which was only week 2 of the season. This year, you had Denver, again, super early in the season. You hang 70 on them. It inflates your numbers. It inflates your stats. Everything's all good when it's the end of summer, early fall, and you could run all over the place like a track meet. No one's bumped. No one's bruised. No one's figured you out. Everything's fresh, and you build up these numbers. But the fact is that towards the later half of the season, not only has this offense faced some adversity, this offense has been ineffective. This offense has not been very good. This offense has not been good, not been effective, not just yesterday, not just against Baltimore, but overall. And the 2 interceptions, somebody says in the chat, were bad throws, not great defense. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is the defense was opportunistic enough to capitalize on bad throws. Not every defense capitalizes on bad throws. And by the way, defenses force guys into bad throws when they force them into rough reads, or they force them to delay too long, or they contain their rushing ability, which is what the defense was able to do to Josh Allen early in the game. And so regardless of how well or not well the defense played, the defense was able to come up with actual stops. And if the defense is coming up with actual stops, whether that's fortuitous for them because of bad play from the opposing quarterback, or whether they were doing a great job, or a combination of both, it's up to this vaunted offense to make a difference. And here's where we're going, Dolphins fans. And I told you had to swallow this tough pill last week when I spoke to you. And I'm telling you again, you're going to need to swallow this tough pill. This team is going to run it back. This is the team we're dealing with. We're dealing with this team for the next several years. And what's scary about that is that Tua and Tyreek Hill, if you add up the salary that they're expected to get, if Tua gets paid anywhere near where he's expected to get paid, and once Tyreek's full salary kicks in, you understand that just 2 of those guys basically are going to eat up a full third of your salary cap. Andrew Van Ginkel, and this is funny. This is what happens to me as a Dolphins fan, right? A couple weeks ago when we lost to the Titans, I was in mourning. I was an absolute wreck, and I was depressed, because I was coming to grips with the fact that all this hope and all these dreams and all of this we turn the corner stuff was absolute nonsense, and it wasn't going to come to fruition. Today, I'm back to my normal self, and this is a sad place to be, because I'm not angry, I'm not sad, I'm not upset, I'm just apathetic. I'm absolutely disengaged and numb. And I've been here before. I was here during the Philbin years. I was here during some of the mid-2000s, where I could just really miss a Sunday and not even watch a game, where I rooted and hoped for the best for players who left Miami because I liked the guy's effort and I knew that our franchise wasn't getting it done for them. Well, that's where I am again today. Andrew Van Ginkel is an awesome player who played his absolute ass off this season to earn a contract and earn a payday to get security for him and his family going forward. He's on a 1-year deal with Miami after Miami almost let him walk, except Vic Fangio called him and wanted him to stay. He has been an absolute difference maker. He's injured. He'll get well. I'm at a point where I hope AVG just gets paid. I don't care if it's with Miami or elsewhere. I want him to be with Miami. But as long as he gets paid and he does well for himself and his family, I'm happy for him. Because I'm a man and a person before anything else. And I'm not going to let my fandom get in the way of logic or objectivity. There's a guy like Christian Wilkins who's playing his absolute ass off, who's a heart and soul of positivity and culture in this defense, who, yes, sometimes doesn't have the absolute best sack numbers, but who absolutely showed up against Josh Allen and who has shown up all year, and despite the lack of rushing on the edge because of injuries, brings pressure up the middle relentlessly all the time. And if the Dolphins are going to let him walk, well, I wish him the best, and I hope his ass gets paid wherever he goes. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because you look at our defense with all their injuries, and you look at our offense, and this team and the philosophy of this franchise is going to be to pay up to 1/3 or more of our salary cap on two key players on offense, completely neglecting and letting guys on defense walk. And that would be fine if this team was carried by the offense. But the fact is, if you look at the stats I just read to you a few minutes ago, it's this offense that has let us down, and it's this defense which has kept us in games despite not even being that great of a defense for a good chunk of the year, despite the injuries. Yet the philosophy of this franchise has been to load up on offense, to emphasize offense, to pay offense. Yet we have limited players that we're paying the lion's share of the salary to. It's not just Tua who's limited. It's Tyreek Hill in clutch situations. Now, Tyreek is hurt. I get that. But he has dropped ball after ball at inopportune times, even dimes from Tua. So it's not all Tua's fault. Tyreek has also not shown up in big moments. And somebody points out in the chat, limited play calling. That's my next point. Thanks for getting me in there with the segue. Mike McDaniel has also been underwhelming. This is a confluence of issues on the offensive side of the ball that has let us down at the end of this season. Mike McDaniel, by the way, let me remind you, Mike McDaniel called some really crappy end-around wide receiver plays and some questionable screen plays at inopportune times that really directly led to some of these injuries. The reason Waddle and Hill are hurt is because of this play calling. And then Hill's injury gets exacerbated even worse when Tua's throwing balls way over his head that he has to jump up for, and he's tweaking his ankle and tweaking his back and tweaking God knows what, trying to go all out to get these balls. And I also see something else with this team. And I'm not one to judge because you handle adversity however you handle it, just like you handle grief however you handle it. And it's really not my place man to man to judge another man's, reaction to things. But I don't see a sense of urgency from this team on the offensive side of the ball, especially. I don't see anybody getting angry. I don't see anybody walking around trying to fix things. I don't see anybody down on a bad play, and I don't want you to be down and linger on it. You got to move on to the next play. I get it. But I don't see that raw determination and that chop mentality, as Greg Schiano at Rutgers would say, to get to the next play and attack it with all your heart and all your might because everything's on the line. I see guys having a heck of a lot of fun, guys laughing things off, guys enjoying the beautiful lives that they have, and they should. Winning isn't everything. Football isn't everything. These guys have multi-million-dollar mansions. They have multi-million-dollar paychecks. They have good family lives. They give back to the community. That's all well and good. But if you want to be a championship team, you want to be a Super Bowl team, you got to have a little bit more of an edge, and you got to care a little bit more on the field. And I heard a whole hell of a lot from Mike McDaniel all season and from Tua and these other guys. A whole lot of bravado, a whole lot of talking about how they're saving up their energy. They're saving up their injury-prone players. They're saving it up for the games that matter at the end of the season. Tua's getting talked to about the Pro Bowl, and he's saying, well, that's all great, but I hope I'm not available because I'll be in the Super Bowl. All this bravado, all this talking, all this emphasis on making a run at the end of the year, and these guys show up short and show up small in the biggest games. If you just want to be the old school, mediocre Miami Dolphins, the Philbin Dolphins, the Gase Dolphins, the Tannehill Dolphins, the Jay Fiedler Dolphins, then just be those guys. Go out and play. Be that second, third place team we're used to, and keep it quiet about Super Bowls and getting where you want to go and saving up injuries and all this other nonsense. Spare it. Spare us. Because I got news for you. Us fans are going to be here. I love going to Miami. I've been going to Miami since I was a little kid. I'll go to practice. I'll get my hats autographed like I did so many times. Cameron Wake's on there, Chad Pennington, Anthony Fasano, all these guys, Vontae Davis. I'll go. I'll do this talk show. I love this community. I'll talk to you guys. I'll keep growing Fury fam. I'll live for the moments. Beat the Jets twice a year. Beat the Jets up here in Jersey so I can see it in person. Give us memories. The Miami Miracle. I don't care. But don't fill our heads and promise us nonsense about Super Bowls and title contentions and AFC title games if this is how small you're going to show up in the moments and games that mean the most. That's what I have a problem with. And this team is going to run it back because they have no choice. But unless we get there's one of two things that we can go from here. There's one of two ways we can bounce back from this. A, we have a season where everybody else falls flat on their face. And we have a season where everything breaks our way. We stay ultra healthy. Other teams go through injury problems or have down years. We wind up getting a playoff seeding position where we have a home game or two. And we make a run. The other way out of this is Mike McDaniel vastly improves as a coach and play caller. Tua Tagovailoa vastly improves in clutch situations when the pressure's on. And guys like Tyreek Hill maintain his ability because eventually that's going to fade and he becomes more of a clutch player. One of those two scenarios is the only way that we're winning a chip with this iteration of the Miami Dolphins. And if we don't, I got news for you. We're going to ride this out for another handful of years, and then it's time to rebuild again. And here's the sad part about being a Dolphins fan right now. And Phil says, I live in Kansas. Forecast for Saturday night is 0 degrees. Not good at all. Not good at all, folks. I don't know. I am not optimistic about our chances against Kansas City. I would love to be wrong. I am not optimistic. And guys, remember the Super Chat's open. You'll get on the screen. I'll answer your question right away. Super Chat's open. Subscribe is open. Click subscribe if you're in here. Click the like button, but click subscribe and join Fury Fam. Check out our memberships. Become a member of the channel. Let's keep growing and getting content out there. We're ready for business. We are back out and up and at it with the monetization, which keeps us afloat. About the only thing keeping us afloat since the Miami Dolphins are hurting us pretty bad in a lot of ways. But, and I see Miami kids say the ticket holders are frauds too. It's a disgrace, how many Buffalo fans flooded the stadium. And I agree with that too. You don't see other fan bases. Giving up that many tickets. I understand the people. I get it. And Omar Kelly says it. It's true. You got to pay for your deposit next year. So you got to sell you sell your tickets when the price is high. You got to make that money back. You got to put your deposit in for next season. I get it. But the level, the extent to which that game was sold to Buffalo fans is a disgrace. And let me tell you something. We do the MetLife takeover every year here in Jersey. And, Jets fans sell their tickets to Dolphins fans. And by the way, the Jets aren't always sold out anyway. So here's some tickets on the market. But even this year when the Jets were down, I was astounded at how many Jets fans showed up on Black Friday to cheer on their team. They didn't start clearing out until the game was out of reach. And normally when we invade the Jets stadium and we have a great contingency of Dolphins fans, or just like we invaded, the Commander Stadium this year, it's because their teams are on a down year and they got nothing to play for. If Miami was on a down year and had nothing to play for and the Bills were going for a title on Sunday, then I would totally understand Dolphins fans selling it to Bills fans and Bills invading the stadium. But this was An epic year for Miami. Supposedly, all these people are telling me it's one of the best years ever and we should all be so happy about it. The division title was on the line, yet Dolphins fans sold enough tickets to have over half or about half the stadium being Bills fans. To the point that Josh Allen was hyping up the crowd. And when the Bills won the division title on our turf, all these Bills fans got to party the night away in South Florida and celebrate their division title because our fans gave up those tickets. This is a cultural problem with the franchise. It starts at the top, it goes all the way down. Now, I've been very critical of Stephen Ross. I've been critical of Stephen Ross for a long time. And I still have a lot of criticism for Stephen Ross. But the fact is that Stephen Ross is paying Vic Fangio as the highest paid defensive coordinator in the league. Stephen Ross took some of his own money to renovate the stadium, and the stadium is beautiful. If rumors are true that Stephen Ross wanted to draft Lamar Jackson and Chris Greer overruled him and said no, then maybe Stephen Ross isn't the full problem here. But something I also recognize about Stephen Ross is he has an affinity for these nerdy Poindexter offensive-minded coaches because he has this fantasy in his head that to be a successful franchise, you have to be a glitzy, glamorous, bells and whistles offensive team. Yet repeatedly, the defense of this team has carried it in its most difficult times. And if you're going to hire a whiz kid coach who's lackadaisical and happy and skipping around with his capris on, and you're going to bring in a quarterback who's smaller, has some physical limitations, and is injury prone, and you're going to pay a huge proportion of your salary cap to offensive speed players, then your offense better be world beaters. Your offense better carry the team at the most pivotal times. And if your offense is not doing that, then there's something wrong with the culture and philosophy of this franchise and how you've decided to build a franchise and build a team. And at this point, I've got to question every aspect of this organization from Ross down. I understand we wanted Joe Burrow that year. We tried to trade up. We didn't get him. He's injury prone too. And I'm not putting this all on Tua because it's not all Tua. But when you put so much of your resources and effort into maximizing Tua's potential, and he's having the most underwhelming game of the season and throwing 2 picks, 1 touchdown, only completing 17 passes for only 173 yards in the biggest game of the season, even after you've put so much resource into bolstering him, then you have a philosophical problem with the way that you're building your team. You brought in Tyreek Hill. You made him one of the highest paid receivers in the league. He deserves it, of course, but you did it to support the quarterback. Most teams only have one guy like Waddle and Hill. We have 2. You bring in a coach where you try so hard to bolster Tua's confidence and to have a media propaganda fest for the fans that you have to film. You know, you think this isn't staged? You think somebody just happened to be recording Mike McDaniel on his phone in the plane on the way to Miami? Oh, that was a plant. I told you this 2 years ago when it happened. You're filming Mike McDaniel calling Tua up to say, I'm excited to see you, bud. I'm excited, to try to reassure the fans and bolster Tua. You spend countless hours making a mixtape to give to Tua because his confidence is rattled. You go out and you try to get endorsement deals. You make all these documentaries and whatnot about them. And that's all fine and that's all well and good. But if it doesn't work out, and not only is it not working out, but it's the weak link of your football team, you have failed philosophically in how you've chosen to build your team. And I'm curious about what happens in this offseason. Because just like we saw Philbin come back after a wasted, meaningless game, I am pretty confident. That the Miami Dolphins are going to pay Tua Tagovailoa a substantial amount of money and sign him to a long-term deal. And they're going to let guys like Christian Wilkins and AVG go. They're going to let them walk. And it's fine to double down on those things if it's working. But if the weak link of your team late in the season is your offense and the strong link of your team is your defense late in the season, and you choose to double down on the offense and dismantle the defense, then you have a problem philosophically. And I question your leadership and I question your ability to run this franchise. And it looks like that's where we're headed. Shout out to everybody in here. Click subscribe if you haven't done so already. Join Fury Fam. Hit the super chat, man. Looking for a couple more donations today. Hit the super chat. Let's talk Fins. Now, we're going to Kansas City, and a lot of people are out here saying, look, if Tua, what if he lights up Kansas City, wins a playoff game for the first time in 20-plus years? Do you feel differently? Well, of course I feel differently if that were to happen. That's a hypothetical what if. We've been dealing with hypothetical what ifs for 2 years. We posed the same question, and the same question was posed to me this week. What if Tua goes in there, and what if he lights up the Buffalo Bills? What if he plays great with the season on the line? Would you be more confident? Of course I would. And thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it, brother. Welcome, man. I appreciate it. I try to keep it real on this channel. I try to just speak objectively, realistically, even keeled as best I can. My post-game rants are, legend in their own right, and those are emotional, but I try to keep it real when I'm on the mic, just talking straight up stuff. And guys, again, become a member. I mean, Phil's a member. We got members. Become a member. There's 3 different levels. Support the channel. Support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Support the channel. So, at the end of the day, I'm sick of the what ifs. I'm sick of waiting for this greatness to come to fruition. Now, I wasn't somebody who was sitting here talking junk about Tua all season or even last season. I'm somebody who's been keeping it real from jump, and when Tua's played really well, I've been saying, wow, this kid is something special. Let's see. It's a show me season. I told you guys earlier in the year that this was going to be a show me season, and I said, let's see if they can come through when it counts and they can come through at the end and they can turn the corner when it matters most. And despite all these glitzy, amazing stats at the beginning of the year, 2 years in a row, I'm still waiting for Tua to do something pivotal in a big game. So sure, if we light it up in Kansas City and beat them and win a playoff game, we'll have a different conversation next week when I come here to talk to you. But as of right now, my logic is telling me I'm not going to see that next week. And I don't know when or if ever I'm going to see that, because time and time again, it's the same thing. Now, who out there, this is how you know if you really believe the nonsense you spew when you still, you call people haters, or you say, you're not happy with a winning season for the first time and such or whatever. You're full of it when you don't complete this exercise honestly. Now do it. You don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell anybody else. Just keep it to yourself. Keep it to yourself. But when we were down 21-14 and our defense stops Josh Allen and we get the ball back with a minute and change left in the game and we need a touchdown to try to get back in the game, to try to tie the game and go to overtime. Deep in your actual heart, in your actual mind, not what you said, not what you cheered, not what you hoped, deep in your actual head, when we came out on offense with a minute and change left, with an opportunity to tie the game with a touchdown, did you think it would end the way it ended, with an interception or maybe a fumble snap or something? Or did you actually think we were going to tie that game? And you don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to tell anybody. Just be real with yourself. When we came out, what did you expect? If somebody had put a gun to your head and said, tell me what happens, and you had to answer like that, what would you say? What would you have said? You know, and I know, that at least 90% or more of the people chilling in Aqua watching the game would have said, we're not going to get it done. We're not going to get it done. You know why? Because you've never seen them get it done. Never seen them get it done. So why would that change? And we see, the Tua, we see a chat in here. I don't know about you, Larry, but I'm over everyone saying, when was the last time the team had 11 wins? They don't understand division is without Brady and Rodgers did not play. Yeah, we had 11 wins. I don't care if we had 9 wins, 10 wins, or 11 wins. If we go into the playoffs and we lose in the first round and we're a wild card team, it's not good enough. We've been there before. You understand that too. People act like we're the Cleveland Browns. And, the Cleveland Browns looking better than us right now. This team has been mediocre for decades. So what? A couple of years ago, we had losing seasons, 7-9. Okay. A couple of years before that, we had winning seasons. We won the division with Tony Sperano running the Wildcat with Chad Pennington, who just got cut by the Jets. We went to the playoffs every year under Jimmy Johnson and under Dave Wannstedt. We had an excellent defense under Nick Saban. We went to the playoffs with Adam Gase and Tannehill, even though he got hurt at the end. Didn't really get his chance. Who cares how many games we win in the regular season if it ends the same way? It's not like we've been 0-18 for years and just making the playoffs or just having a decent season is enough to celebrate. What do you think? This is college football? You just want to beat your rival once or twice? And let me tell you something. Even if this was college football, getting swept by the Bills is like losing to your biggest rival. You think you'd be happy at the end of the season, a rivalry week, because you lost to your biggest rival, but you had a better season than you've had? What are we talking about? This season is an abject failure. This season is an abject failure. When you have a 3-game lead in your division with 5 games to go, and all you need to do is beat the crappy teams you're supposed to beat at home. And even if you lose on the road to Baltimore, and even if you lose also to Buffalo because they have your number, you should still be able to win the division because all you had to do was beat the Titans at home. And it took the defense giving you short fields to even be in the game and ahead with a position to win. The defense still wets the bed, but the offense does nothing. Nothing unless it was a short field. Nothing on 2 opportunities late in the game to seal the game. Nothing this last game against the Bills to seal the game when they could have. Nothing. And all your money and all your effort and all the hype and all the media and everything you've done is offense-centric, and you've got nothing to show for it in the clutch. And Sea Devil saying only failure to those with unrealistic expectations. Well, what expectations do you want? This is a success, Sea Devil? What, it's a success because Tyreek Hill, one of the best receivers in the league, Tua Tagovailoa with some of the most passing yards in the league, a team with a great home schedule with a 3-point lead in the division doesn't win the division? That's because what? You're a realistic fan? You knew that was going to happen based on what other than pessimism? Because this team is this team, and this team always lets us down. Objective analysis shows us that this team probably should have been good enough to win the division given the circumstances this year. Now, I knew this team was done after they lost to Tennessee. That's why I went through my mourning process. That's why I'm okay now. So I knew it going into the game that we were probably going to lose. But it's still an abject failure. There's no excuse for how bad this collapse was at the end of the year. Once again. Team is not built. The team is built. Okay? The team is built. This is the team. Now, it might not be built properly. It might not have the right person at head coach or the right person at quarterback or what, but it's built. Because not only, you got to understand, this season you saw guys go down and guys go down and guys go down, and the depth stepped up. The depth stepped up. Lamb filled in on both sides of the line very well. Eichenberg stepped in at center, had a better season replacing a all-pro center than you think he would. Tyreek Hill goes out for a game and Waddle lights up the Jets. Jalen Phillips goes down and AVG goes off. AVG goes out and the defense still puts us in position to win a game. The team is built. It's just sad to say that is the way this team is built. Even though it is built, it might not be a strong enough team to go up against other teams that are built better. It's like you built the house. It looks great. It's got a pool. It's got extra rooms. It's got a bowling alley. It's got a half-court basketball setup. It's got a movie theater. But you forgot to put the flame retardant on certain critical aspects of the construction, and it goes up in flames. Kind of like a metaphor for what happened with Tyreek's house and the season. Or it wasn't properly built to withstand floods and it's on the shore. And there are other teams out there that have exceptional brickwork, a great foundation, and are built of steel. So the way we built it, and it's built, is not good enough. And that's the hard pill that I'm trying to have you guys finally swallow and accept here, is that this is the team. And unless something happens and breaks our way in the next couple years, this is the team, and it's not looking like we're going to get to the finish line. Because this is the team. This is it. This is what we built. This is what Chris Greer and Stephen Ross built. The salary caps are going to start kicking in. Guys are going to have to start leaving. Guys are going to start getting older. After a couple years, their talent and abilities are going to start to erode as they age. This is what we built. There's no magic tweak. There's no magic tweak to fix this. Yeah, we got to upgrade tight end. We got to upgrade linebacker. But guess what? That's what happens when a team's already built and you're already paying guys. We can only do so much. We have to upgrade inside linebacker. But guess what? Both of our outside linebackers, and now all three of our outside linebackers are hurt. Bradley Chubb isn't coming back for the beginning of next season. Jalen Phillips probably not going to be ready for the beginning of next season. So you're going into next season, you got to rebolster and get reinforcements for your outside linebackers, let alone reinforcing your inside linebackers. You let Christian Wilkins walk, and now you got a hole in the interior of your front defensive line, in the middle of your defensive line. You let AVG walk, and your depth at outside linebacker or your potential starter is gone. You got to fill that gap. So it's not like we're going forward and we have a few holes to plug and we can upgrade. We're going forward with the team already built, and now we're going to lose guys and have to plug in behind them. So this is the built team. This is the built team. I just don't think it's built very well. It is what it is. And, you know, the thing with Grier is, the thing with Grier is, I'll say this, right? Grier, if you look at the actual team and you're objective about it, and this is why I'm so curious about what goes on, right? And assigning blame, whether we're assigning blame, you know, to Grier, or we're assigning blame to Ross or to who, we don't really have all the answers. So it's hard to make a determination and to stand on that determination with conviction, right? Because we really don't know. We really don't know. And it would go a long way if we could answer these couple questions. Number one, did Stephen Ross want Lamar Jackson and Grier said, no way, I will not draft Lamar Jackson? What's the answer to that question? Because that's huge. Did Grier want to hire McDaniel in order to bolster Tua, or was that more of a Stephen Ross move? Was Stephen Ross more involved with the coaching search and the coaching situation than we realize? I need the answer to those two questions in order to pass judgment on Chris Grier. And here's why. The actual team, top to bottom, aside from guys being clutch, Tyreek Hill, Mike McDaniel, Tua Tagovailoa, not being clutch, apart from your biggest influencers in the head coach, the quarterback, and your star wide receiver not being clutch, the team itself, depth-wise, position by position, positions as they match with the philosophies of your coordinators and your coaching staff, the team's built fairly well, fairly deep at almost every position, save for a few. You've drafted guys that are now so good that they're asking for big chunks of money. You might not even be able to keep them, but they were good enough to ascend to difference makers in their respective positions. The biggest question is, did Grier want to go this route with quarterback and head coach, or was he backed into it? Because I got news for you. If it's true that the Fins wanted nothing more than to lose every possible game in 2019 to wind up with the top pick to get the best quarterback available, and Brian Flores went along and won anyway, which you can't blame him. That's what coaches do. That's what teams do. You can't make anybody tank. But if the idea was always to tank and the Dolphins didn't actually wind up making it happen, and Grier was stuck with the 5th pick in that draft, and he wanted to, just like the rumor said, they tried desperately to trade up to get Joe Burrow, but they couldn't do it. I don't know how you can blame him for picking Tua at number 5. There are some drafts where there is no quarterback. Now, me personally, yeah, after the first year of Herbert and Tua, I was kind of saying, wow, we should have gotten Herbert. But personally, I was hoping that we would wait a year, take another important piece, and maybe go for Trevor Lawrence. But Trevor Lawrence hasn't been good either in the clutch. But that just shows how difficult it is to pick a quarterback. Look at the Jets. They pretty much had to take Zach Wilson because he was there at number 2. Not every draft has a legitimate quarterback. But if you're going to rebuild, you got to start with the quarterback, and that's what they say these days. So you got to pick a quarterback ranked near the top, and Tua is that guy, and his stats are showing he is a pretty good quarterback, all things considered. He's not clutch at all. But I don't know that I can blame Grier and Ross for picking Tua when they couldn't trade up to get Burrow. It's not like Herbert's very good. They had to take who they had to take. But if Grier really went against picking Lamar Jackson earlier in his career, then he definitely deserves all the blame. And if Grier was the reason that we went out and got McDaniel just to bolster Tua because he wanted to be justified in his pick of Tua, then I assign the blame to Grier. But on the other hand, if this Lamar Jackson rumor is not true, and Grier had to pick who he had to pick in that draft, and Tua was available, and Stephen Ross put pressure on him to sell tickets because Tua has such a huge fan base, and then Stephen Ross put pressure to hire McDaniel because that's his type of candidate, then I can't put it on Chris Grier because the rest of the team is built pretty well. And Phil says, yeah, we couldn't even tank right because, we didn't pick a coach who was on board. And that's tough because I don't know if any coach is really going to be on board, but I hear what you're saying. They obviously didn't have a meeting of the minds when they hired him. Obviously not. And that's led to problems too. But the thing is, it really doesn't matter what any of us say about the head coach, the quarterback, any of those things, because they're not going anywhere. And the way somebody like Big O is talking, who I have reason to believe is plugged into the front office in the Grier camp, and he's casting as many aspersions as he can onto Mike McDaniel as opposed to Tua. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they fired another coach and tried to get another coach in here to make Tua succeed. And it's interesting, right? Because as a football fan, like I said, Tua's a good quarterback. He's not a bad quarterback. The numbers don't lie, even though you can't rely only on numbers. So you have a good team that made the postseason, that has a winning record. But we all know, and we've all seen that we don't have what it takes, not even close to what it takes to make a run to the biggest games and to make playoff runs late in the season. We don't. Even Tyreek Hill shows up small in the biggest games. So what do you do with that? What do you do with a team that's objectively good, but objectively not good enough to do what we've all been wanting to do teams have pecking orders, right? The Jets, save for a couple of years, are usually an organizational nightmare, an organizational joke. Their owner walks around with a big Woody chain on. I mean, he's silly. They gave the franchise to Aaron Rodgers. Now they're all living in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood over there, and anything he says goes. The Browns have been mired in failure forever. The Detroit Lions have had their share. Then you have teams that are always, formidable. Pittsburgh, even on a terrible down year, is still making the postseason. Baltimore, they're always there. They're always a good team. They're always a tough team. They win a couple Super Bowls in our lifetimes in this century. And when they're not winning Super Bowls, they're in the postseason. They're contending for divisions. You have pecking orders in this league. You have pecking orders in this league. And the Miami Dolphins have always been this mediocre team as of the last 40, 50 years. This mediocre team who is not bad. Usually will beat the bad teams, but never shows up in the postseason to beat the best teams and has a lot of trouble trying to go win a chip. When you look at those metrics and the way things work, nothing's really changed here. And nothing is going to change here in the near future. And that's just the reality of being a Miami Dolphins fan. Nothing is going to change in the near future. And so we find ourselves where we find ourselves, and that's it. Now, Facebook user says, how can you call national championship winners Tua Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence not clutch? You're exaggerating. Marino has had game winners and also threw interceptions to blow games, yet he was considered clutch. I'll tell you how I can't consider Tagovailoa and Trevor Lawrence clutch. Yesterday. I saw him yesterday. They weren't clutch. That's how. And by the way, I'm sick of hearing this Tua Tagovailoa clutch thing from college. He won the national championship when he first came in as a freshman because it was a change out from Jalen Hurts that day. He still threw a pick, by the way. He was more of a mobile threat at the time. He won one game coming in with a spark with fearless freshman energy. It was an awesome game. He had amazing receivers. They were a good team. He won. Good for him. I'm not taking that title away from him. But subsequent to that, when he was the guy, he was the starter, he was the same as he is in the NFL. He threw up a ton of stats, destroyed bad teams, and college football is all about bad teams. I don't care if you're Alabama. I don't care if you're LSU. I don't care if you're Georgia. I don't care if you're Michigan. I don't care if you're Ohio State. I don't care who you are. Washington Huskies, I don't care who you are. Most of the season, at least half the season, you're playing teams that are way worse than you because in your own conference, they're almost always worse than you. You're playing bad teams. When he beat up on bad teams and threw stats up at Alabama, he still struggled in the toughest games at Alabama. He was injury prone and he struggled. So don't tell me that he's proven. I mean, and this is sad. This isn't me hating on Tua. I hate to say this. I wish this wasn't true, but the fact is, this didn't just start in the NFL. It's not like he had this killer instinct gene in him, and now all of a sudden we can't find it. We're looking to re-find it. I don't know if he ever had it, which is really scary because maybe he never will. But he wasn't killing teams and performing in the clutch in college either, except for the one game that made him a star. And then that hype machine got out of control. And he declared for the draft early. We'd never know what he would have done if he went back to college for a year and how much more his stock might have fallen regardless of the injury. I'm not knocking him. He's a good quarterback. I've said it. But this idea that he was generational, franchise-changing, superstar Hall of Famer, Super Bowl caliber guy, no matter what, was a hype machine thing fueled by the national title game, the Alabama hype, the hype coming out of his home state and all the stuff that surrounds that, and wasn't actually based in reality. So don't ask me how I can question whether he's clutch. The evidence is right in front of your face. Irving Figueroa, thank you very much for the donation to the channel. Thank you for the super chat, sir. Coming in with the Peace Tyreek Hill sign. You'd get to hop up to the front of the line and put your comment on the screen. Much appreciated. And it says the Dolphins catfish this fan base. Sorry, Dolphins. And you know what? Irving's right. Irving, you're right. This is what I've been saying ever since that plane video calling Tua. I can't wait to get you started. It's going to be great. And all the Tuaneers coming out saying, oh, we got a real coach now. Now we got a real coach. Flores was the worst. Big O saying he's Cam Flow. And now we got a real coach. Now we got, Mike McDaniel. And all of a sudden, Mike McDaniel's the worst guy ever. They built up smoke and mirrors and hid deficiencies and beat up on lesser teams. And it was all a farce. It was all a fraud. Once again, guys like me, guys like Irving, people in the fan base who knew better, but are emotional. We love our team. People saying we don't love our team because we're realistic. That's a cop-out. You don't have to be happy-go-lucky and positive all the time to truly be a fan. We're truly fans. In fact, fans who are honest and hurt more are even better fans, I'd argue. And yes, we were catfished. They preyed on our emotions. They played on our ability to try to be happy, and they screwed us again. Every year, the same thing. And I got news for you guys. They're going to do it again next year. Next year, They're going to come out and say, well, if we only stay healthy, we had too many injuries. The media talking heads are going to start saying it. The media heads in Miami are going to say it. All the propagandists are going to start saying, oh, if they just stay healthy down the stretch, they had too many injuries last year. They're going to be better. We're going to come out next season. I don't know how good we're going to start because we still have some of those injuries lingering. But we're going to come out. We're going to look good again in September and October. And a bunch of people are going to fall victim again. I'm going to go back to practice. I'm going to go back to the games. I'm going to start having fun. And you know what? Here's the thing. I actually enjoy just going to games and just being a fan, even if we don't have a chance at the Super Bowl. I'll do it. I love this community. I love being a Dolphins fan. I'm going to go have fun at the tailgate and have a couple drinks and have some food anyway. I'm going to have fun with it. But don't get catfished again because we're going to the exact same place next year. That's what happens. And Carrie D, thank you for the donation to the channel on the Super Chat. Carrie D says, thanks for the honest talk and thoughtful commentary. It's sad to expect mediocrity. Improving does not equal excellence. Listening from Ohio. I hope you have some nice weather out there. I hope you at least got some snow out in Ohio. We had a little bit of snow here in New Jersey, New York, but it didn't amount to much accumulation. It is very cold out here, though, and not very pleasant. Carrie, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Your donation goes a long way, but your words go even further. Hearing that you're listening from Ohio and you understand what I'm saying is awesome. I completely agree with you, Carrie. Look, and welcome, and thank you so much. And it's true. It is sad that we expect mediocrity, but we have nothing else to expect. And you're 100% right. Improving does not equal excellence. Just because we are better than we were last year because we don't have an injured quarterback, just because we're better than we were under Gase, or we're marginally better than some of these regimes because we've made the playoffs twice. And by the way, these regimes all made the playoffs at least once. Sperano made the playoffs once. Gase made the playoffs once. Flores didn't, but he came close. He had these streaky teams. And Flores wasn't great by any stretch, but he did build this defense, which has kind of carried us in some ways, not all the time. You know, some of the wins this year were on the offense helping us when the defense was absolutely terrible. Let's not kid ourselves. But just because we've improved marginally, just because we made the postseason, doesn't mean we're excellent. Doesn't mean we're where we want to be. Doesn't mean we're giving the fans enough. So thank you for your comment, Carrie, and I completely agree. Fans of this team, I know plenty of fans out there. Plenty of fans out there who would tell you if they asked, and I'm one of these people. I was thinking about it all year this year because it looked like we might actually have a chance. And this wasn't an irrational chance, right? I wasn't sitting up here saying irrationally, we're just world beaters, we're going to beat everybody. I was looking at the actual layout of the season, the actual path to the Super Bowl. What I saw was a Kansas City Chiefs team who's down this year. I saw a Baltimore Ravens team who has a history of choking in the biggest moments in the postseason. I saw a Jets team that went out and got Aaron Rodgers, and he went down in the first couple plays of the game. I saw a Bills team that was down on their luck and really struggled in the middle of the season. And I saw a schedule for Miami which lined up with the lead we had midseason, such that we had a legitimate shot at least the 2 seed and possibly the 1 seed, which would grant us the ability to have home field advantage throughout the playoffs, which really honestly could have given us a legitimate chance at getting to the Super Bowl. And I was already thinking this year that, geez, if we could just win one chip, if we could just win one Super Bowl title in my lifetime, just so I could see one title in my lifetime, given the history of this franchise, and this franchise has a proud history. I understand not much has happened recently, but this franchise has a proud history. We have 2 rings. We have 5 AFC titles. We have a bunch of memorable seasons, a bunch of AFC championships. Believe it or not, we have a winning record against every one of the teams in our division. I'm not sure about the Bills now that they beat us twice this year, but every other team. And just give me one chip, one Super Bowl that I get to witness, that I get to experience, and I'll be happy as a fan for the rest of my life. I just want one Super Bowl title to complement the history, and I'll go on being a fan and enjoying the moments and going to the games and buying the merchandise and all those things. So it's not like this fan base is ultra unrealistic or spoiled or has a bad attitude. We just want one. And this year, there was some logical possibility that we could get there, to the point that I was planning on coming down there for a playoff game this year, assuming we would get at least one home playoff game. But that is the precise reason. And I agree, Phil. See you later, my brother. Thanks for being a Fury Fam Executives member. Remember, guys, Phil is a member of the channel. You guys can be members. Just go to membership. Check out some of the options. It's awesome if you join. It keeps you supporting the channel on a residual basis. And there's behind-the-scenes stuff that you get and other perks. So check out becoming a member. It's really appreciated. All of you subscribers are Fury Fam members, so click subscribe. But then you can get a level up and be officially in the inner circle of Fury Fam if you join the channel and become a member. It's greatly appreciated. Keeps me doing this content and bringing the realistic, objective talk to you as we go through this process of being a Dolphins fan, which is never easy. It's never easy. But I knew when we lost to Tennessee and Buffalo beat Kansas City, I knew that week that my logical path to the Super Bowl was largely gone, which is why I was so depressed during that week. And I accepted and moved on from that, which is why I'm seeming okay today, because I already expected this. After that weekend, I knew where we were headed. And that's sad, but that's true. Now, the fact is we did have some pretty catastrophic injuries. You are down a star center. He's maybe the best center in the league, one of the best centers in the league. He's out for the year. You're down 2 pass rushers who were some of the best pass rushers in the league, and they were a two-headed monster coming at opposing quarterbacks in Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb. You lose a cornerback who was an integral part of your defensive scheme. You go through bumps and bruises with guys like Tyreek Hill, with guys like Raheem Mostert all year. You lose a good guard and win. So, injuries play some role in this. We've had pretty catastrophic injuries this year, pretty bad injuries that any team would have difficulty, winning with down the stretch. If you look at Buffalo, where Buffalo struggled the most this year was in the middle of the season when they had all those injuries piled on top of one another. They get a little bit healthier, and it's no wonder that they were going on a winning streak late in the year. So I'm not going to sit here and say that there were no injuries or say that there were no, reasons why this team faltered down the stretch. I can't say that. But I'm not using that as an excuse. And Sea Devils out here, how can we? No, I'm not using it as an excuse. The reason is I didn't see any of those injuries yesterday as the reason why we lost. You can't tell me Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips and Andrew Van Ginkel are the reason we lost when the defense stops them on 4th and short at the end of the game. When the defense has 2 turnovers on downs and multiple turnovers. You can't tell me that injuries are the reason we lost when Devon Achane is going off like an absolute beast and running for over 100 yards and running at 5 yards a clip when Raheem Mostert goes out. You can't tell me that injuries are the reason we lost when the one game Tyreek Hill was out, Jalen Waddle went off and we destroyed the Jets. You can't tell me injuries are the reason we lost when Liam Eichenberg filled in for Connor Williams at center and we still had pretty good running production and Tua still had plenty of time to throw on most throws. So as much as the injuries hurt, every team has them. Buffalo, Gabe Davis went out. They lost their number 2 receiver who'd been killing us every time we played him. Gabe Davis went out. They had injuries. They had defensive players out. They lost Matt Milano, one of the biggest difference makers on that whole team. So while injuries come into account, and I can't discount them, and the reason I'm saying that is next year, there's going to be the narrative that we have to stay healthy. I'm not buying it. Just like I didn't buy this year. Oh, the reason they didn't make a deep playoff run is because Tua was hurt. If Tua stays healthy, that's the key. They'll make a deep playoff run. They're a Super Bowl contender. That's not true. I told you it wasn't true. And look, it's not true. Tua's healthy, and we're not a Super Bowl contender. Tua's healthy, and we still had an epic fail and lost the division when we should have won it. Tua's healthy, and we're finishing 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions for under 200 yards and a 60-something quarterback rating. Tua's healthy, and we're headed to the same exact place we were last year. So next year, you're going to tell me if all these guys are healthy, I don't buy it. And by the way, all the guys are not going to be healthy, and Tua may not be healthy. That's just how this game is. There's some bad breaks with injuries, and yes, there's a chance if we can stay immaculately healthy next year, or if we get some of these guys, back next year at the right time. So say we go in without Bradley Chubb, without Jalen Phillips, but we stay afloat for most of the season, and we get those guys back at the right time going into the postseason, maybe we can get hot. So you have to take injuries into consideration to some extent. To some extent. To some extent. But that's not an excuse for the epic fail this year. It's just not an excuse for the epic fail this year. You can't be up 3 games with 5 games to go and lose the division. You can't be up 3 games with 5 games to go with a game at home to win the division and lose the game. And you can't be up 3 games with 5 games to go with the league's leading receiver, have a game at home, your defense riddled with injuries, turn the ball over 3 times, plus 2 turnovers on downs, and lose the game if you want to be considered an elite championship caliber quarterback and an elite championship caliber coach. There's really nothing else to say. You can't counter that. If 2 of our linemen went down and Tua got sacked 10 times, if our starting tackle went down and Tua got injured because of a hit, now we could talk about injuries and how injuries derailed the season and how injuries made all the difference. But given the circumstances and factors I just laid out for you, you can't prove the case that but for the injuries, we win. See, that's the thing. And I'm an attorney. I practice law. When you're suing somebody for damages or you're defending against damages, there's certain elements you have to prove, right? Because correlation and causation are not the same thing. Just because you can prove that some circumstantial context existed does not mean you can prove that that was the cause of what happened. You have to prove both to win your case. You have to prove both to win your case. And while you can show me that there were so many injuries that this team had going into the Buffalo game, you cannot prove that those injuries are what caused the loss. To the contrary, I think based on what I just said and based on what we all saw, you can actually prove that the injuries were not the reason we lost. And there were other factors at play. And for that reason, you can't sit there and tell me that injuries are the reason for this collapse. Now, that's also taking into consideration that this loss yesterday was not the only loss of the season. And if we had won just one more game, we would have been the number 2 seed. We would have won the AFC East. And in those other losses that we had, you certainly can't tell me that every one of those was due to one of these injuries. Because in some of those games, we were mostly healthy. At least as healthy as most other teams in the league. So you can't tell me that. And you see no left guard, Achane and a hobbled Hill is not enough to beat a team like Buffalo or Baltimore. Maybe not Baltimore, but it sure was enough to beat Buffalo. Yes, it was. We just failed. Brad Boss says, Flo was right all along. He wanted love. Greer wanted Tua. Big difference there. How can you justify building a team around Tua and paying him $50+ million a year? Brad Boss, thank you for the donation. Thank you for supporting the channel. It's greatly appreciated. That's why your comment is here, and I'm going to talk directly to it. Thank you again for the donation and the love. Love looks like a pretty good quarterback. Is he the answer? I don't know. We'll see. Was Flo the answer? I don't know. By a lot of accounts, Flo was stubborn. By a lot of accounts, Flo was hard to work with. This Patriot tree has not really done well overall. Mike Vrabel wasn't a Patriot coach. He was a Patriot player. So I don't know if you really consider him part of the Patriot tree. They haven't done too well, the Patriots. Patriot coaches. Flores, I think he might get another crack at one of these jobs sooner or later, and we'll see if Flores is the guy or not. I'll tell you right now, they already built a team around Tua, and I think you're right, Brad. How do you build a team around Tua and it fails? They built a team completely around Tua to all his strengths and everything else, and it didn't get it done. How can you justify paying Tua $50 million a year? I think there's a bigger conversation here, and I think you bring up a really good point, Brad, a really good point. How do you build a team around Tua, and how do you pay him $50 million? Here's the issue. Here's the issue with this entire league, in my opinion. And this is a grander philosophical issue, and I think it's going to hurt all fans in the long run, one way or another. And it's true. And Brad, I really appreciate you bringing this up because I wanted to bring this up before, but because of your awesome donation and super chat, you sparked something that I had forgotten. Now I'm going to go back to. The fact is that this league, under Roger Goodell, and over the last 20 or so years, especially with backing from Kraft and Brady and Belichick and this, league that thinks that the only way to sell tickets, that the only way to commercialize the league to maximum benefit, and the only way to expand the league, which, by the way, makes no sense because the most popular sport in the world is soccer. And soccer, you're lucky if you get 2 or 3 goals max. Yet people are fanatics about soccer. So this idea that you have to have glitzy offense to expand and sell tickets is BS anyway. But this league over the last 20 years has emphasized the passing game and the quarterback position to a point where you literally live and die by one player on the team and its quarterback. And there's only about 5 guys that can really get it done at quarterback in any given year. That means only 5, maybe 6, 7 teams actually have a legit chance at the Super Bowl because only they have those couple quarterbacks that are not only statistically good, like Tua is statistically great, but can get it done in clutch situations, which we've seen Tua not be able to do so far. And what happens is you place such an emphasis on the quarterback position that you're creating rules just to defend the quarterback position, which puts other guys in vulnerable positions or gets them penalties at inopportune times or thwarts their ability to play defense. Then you get in a position where anybody who's going to rebuild a team, you can't go back to the old Bill Parcells philosophy, rightly or wrongly, and it was probably the wrong decision, but whatever, and draft a tackle or a running back or a receiver or a linebacker to be the cornerstone of your team, like the old Parcells and the old Giants when they drafted Lawrence Taylor, and that's what made all the difference in the team. You think Phil Simms was the reason they won that Super Bowl of those two? It was Lawrence Taylor. You can't get any other position on the team when you rebuild. You have to start with a quarterback. But that's a tough situation because not every year there's a great quarterback in the draft available. But regardless, if you're just got hired that year and you have to rebuild, you have no chance but to take a gamble on one of the guys in the draft. And if that guy doesn't pan out, which is hard for anybody to pan out, because at any given time, there's 32 guys in the league, but only 5 or 6 of them that can actually get it done in the biggest moments. If you pick wrongly, then you're going to get flushed out in 3 or 4 years because everything is so dependent on the quarterback position. And Brad Boss, to your question, you have to pay $50 million or $45 million or $40 million or whatever it is because the quarterback is such a pivotal position in this league that even if the guy is just okay, he has to eat up the majority of your salary cap because the league is so quarterback centrist that position is disproportionately valued on every team. And it kills teams because if the guy is not a top 4 guy who literally puts the team on his shoulder, then you're disproportionately paying him no matter what. What I mean is, if you're paying a guy like a quarter of your salary cap, then he should be able to carry the team, at least a quarter of the team, on his own shoulders. But most quarterbacks can't do that, yet they're still getting compensated that way. So you can't pay other role players because you don't have the money, because the quarterback's eating such a large proportion of your salary up, but he's not carrying such the same amount of proportion of the load on the field. So if Tua's not going to put the team on his back, then how the hell should he eat up all of that salary cap? He shouldn't. However, it's hard not to pay it because that's the market. That's the way the league's been structured. And I think it's detrimental because whenever your quarterback goes down, your season's over, unless you're the freaking Browns. Whenever you go down, your season's over. If you don't draft the right guy, you're screwed for years. If the guy's good but he's not clutch, you're never going to win the big game. I mean, this is the way the league went. This is the way the league went. And I'll tell you, there's something else going on here that people aren't paying attention to. Some people said it to me. And I heard it on the radio because Tiki Barber is on the radio up here, and he was talking about it because he was a former player. And there's something else going on, which is pressure from the players' union. This idea that guys can just willy-nilly take way less money to stay with a team or to help a team build a formidable squad around them, given the salary cap. The players' union does not like that. The players' union puts pressure on guys to take the maximum amount of money they can get at their position because it lifts all the guys underneath and next to them. When you reset the market and you consistently get higher money, it gives everybody else a better bargaining chip with the teams. So the players' union wants every player to maximize their contract so that the rest of the players can have better negotiating leverage when they go to the table for their contract. So if you're going to go out there and undercut yourself or be honest and give teams a discount because of your shortcomings, despite how crazy the market is, you're going to hear it from the fellow players and from the players' union. So there's a lot of factors at play here. It's not just Tua and his agent and the Miami Dolphins. There's other facets to consider here. There's other aspects and context that goes into these negotiations. So, and I don't know if it's a reaction because of Mahomes, and I think there is a discussion to be had. And like I said, I'm going to be here and I'm going to be with you guys in the offseason. We're going to be talking about, different things that go on with Miami. And one of those things is going to be contract negotiations between, the team and several of these players. And, these contract negotiations are going to be interesting to watch. They really are. And we're going to see how things shake out, because I think somebody really made a good point on here. And they said, maybe 35 mil and that's max. I think if we're being honest here, no matter what the players union says, no matter what the market is, no matter how crazy the market is, look, and thank you, Mike. Still love that picture of Cat in the Bills shirt, but whatever. Thank you, sir. Hit subscribe, guys. Become a member. 3 membership options. Click the super chat. Donate to the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Click like. Click subscribe. Let's keep this channel growing. This is a smaller channel right now, but I keep it real on this channel. I do think we're giving you some content that you don't get everywhere else, and everywhere else is great too. Tons of great content creators in this community. We are a great community everywhere, but I think this channel is unique, and if we can stay afloat and we can keep growing, and we can keep expanding with the donations, with the subscriptions and whatnot, it'll just be a good addition to the community and good addition to your weekly Dolphins content. So, I appreciate all the support out there. Look, despite what the market is, despite what the agent says, whatever, if Tua fails next week in Kansas City, which is likely, and it's not just his failure, it's the team's failure, but if they fail and they had an epic collapse once again, and Tua really didn't get it done, and it wasn't just getting done, Tua. It wasn't just getting done. It was blatantly failing. Like when you throw 2 picks and you throw a pick at the end of the game, another game, whatever you want to say about whether or not Wilson ran the right route or whatever. I mean, you got to make that play when a guy's running free into the end zone and he misses them, and then he throws into the dirt. Then he throws a nonsensical duck. Then when he fumbles on the last play of the game or falls down for a sack, the last play against the Titans, this wasn't just the team not getting it done and Tua not having, glossy stats at the end of the year. This is Tua absolutely failing in the most pivotal games. I think that hurts his bargaining position a bit. So maybe you will see something where you are not paying exorbitant amounts of money for Tua's services next year. Maybe Tua really does, get down into the 30s range, which would allow us to build a better supporting cast around him. That might be the ideal situation for this team. And excuse me a second. Sorry, guys. But Tua, if he gets paid less than what some people expect, there's a legitimate chance that we can continue to build around this team. And the fact is that I may seem like I'm completely down on the team, but I'm actually just being more realistic. Is it likely that we wind up in the same situation next year that we're in this year? Yes. However, the truth is this team isn't terrible. I mean, they're a pretty decent team in the regular season. If they can continue to build and retain talent around Tua, and if Tua can improve, and if this team can improve, they do have a chance to make some legitimate run at some point. And I actually have the track pants on with the jacket on, because a lot of times I do come in with the suit. But today, on a day like this, I just have the track pants on with the top. And yeah, we're in the same division as Josh Allen. So what does that mean? Think Josh Allen had an epic game yesterday? You think Josh Allen had an epic season? Because he really didn't. Josh Allen is susceptible to screwing up and having a down year or a down game at any given time. I wouldn't say that Josh Allen is a world beater. Josh Allen's a very good quarterback. Josh Allen's done some good things. Josh Allen can put the team on his back when he needs to, and we've seen that. But Josh Allen could also single-handedly sink a team when he's having a bad day. So I don't know what that comment's supposed to mean. Yeah, Josh had a bad game. We still lost. What does that have to do with anything? I mean, is this the remedial Buffalo people showing up? Anthony, can you read my last 2 comments? I think they got kind of lost here. I see you're saying Greer's the problem. Some of these comments get lost here, guys. I try to grab them. Super chats are the way to guarantee I definitely see them, and I definitely put them on the screen. Otherwise, I try to follow up as much as I can. And I don't think you know what you're talking about, Susan, and you don't know the proper "your" because it's U''RE for that particular phrase there, honey. So at the end of the day, I'm not saying Josh is bad. I'm just saying just because Josh Allen's in your division doesn't mean that you're doomed for eternity, okay? This isn't Tom Brady. That's all I'm saying. That's a fact. And the fact is, if the Dolphins had beaten the Titans instead of completely crap in the bed, they would have won the division. So I don't know what Josh Allen being in the division has to do with it. In fact, the reason the Dolphins would have won the division had they beaten the Titans was because Josh Allen had so many bad games this year that the Dolphins were in position to win the division. I mean, what are you talking about? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. But here's the bottom line. If Tua does take less money and they can retain some of this defensive talent and some of the other talent on this team, then we have a chance of 1 year things breaking our way and doing the right thing and maybe getting to where we want to go. Other than that, I really don't know. Troy says, Larry, in your honest opinion, can this franchise win a Super Bowl with Tua? If not, what are we doing? Can we win a Super Bowl with Tua? Technically, theoretically, yeah, we probably can if all the things break properly and the team is injury-free and the team is playing out of their minds at other positions and Tua gets better. Tua further hones his craft. He already has a pretty good foundation. If he hones it and suddenly comes through in the clutch and learns from his mistakes, we can win it. Now, are we likely to win a Super Bowl with Tua at the helm? Right now, as of right now, with what I have to go on, no. I don't think we are likely to win a Super Bowl under this iteration of the Miami Dolphins. It's sad to say, but I don't think it's likely. I hope I'm wrong, and if things change, I'll tell you. As of right now, I don't see that as a likely situation for us. And Anthony says, with this scandal admission with him sending coaches to tape his opponents before games in the Big Ten, can you see the owner, Ross, trying to convince to bring Harbaugh? I'm not. Look, Harbaugh is a good coach. He's a winning coach. There's no way around that. I don't love Harbaugh. There's a lot of personality things that I don't like about Harbaugh. I don't like the cheating scandal. I don't like a lot of things. If he really wants to come to Miami, do you give it a look? Do you have a discussion? Of course you have a discussion. The issue with guys like Harbaugh is, when you bring in a guy like that, you're basically saying you're going to turn the page because these guys have resumes. They have offers elsewhere that enable them to have more autonomy as far as selecting players, more of a say in the front office affairs. And when you bring in a guy like Jim Harbaugh, you're basically saying you're going to turn the page and rebuild because a guy like that comes in, he'll try to work with Tua. He'll be hard on Tua. Somebody says Tua would quit, be hard on him. And then if he doesn't pan out, he's going to want his own guy, and he's going to want his own guy quick. So when you bring in a guy of that caliber, you're basically saying you're rebuilding. And as much as I'm angry at this team and as much as I don't think they're going to get it done, there's only so many teams that even make the playoffs. There's only so many teams that are good enough to be contenders during the regular season and have the type of regular season that this team had. And to flush it down the toilet right now and start rebuilding already, I think is just premature. You can't tear down the team in its current iteration right now. We're not there yet. And if you do that, you're probably foolish because you don't know what could have been. This team has 1 or 2 more years to try to see if it can get it done. Am I confident and faithful that we'll get it done? No. Am I encouraged by what we've seen this year and last year? No. But I just don't see any other option. And just because I don't see any other option doesn't mean that I think this is the winning formula, because I don't. But I don't know if there's another option. Now, if something pops up unexpectedly, somebody becomes available that you think could change it with this current iteration, a coach becomes available, a shakeup with your structure, and you think it'll work with this group. I mean, that's what they did with Flores. They fired Flores. They brought in McDaniel. That's what they thought would work with this group. Change a head coach, but don't tear it down yet. It had some dividends paid. It worked out to some extent, but ultimately it's still failing. I don't think you can go. I just don't think it's possible. I just don't think it's possible, to be honest with you guys. I just don't think it's possible to tear down, to switch coaches 3 times and still try to keep the same team here. It's just not done. One time changing a head coach, keeping the quarterback, keeping the front office, keeping the team is enough. I don't know that you can fire another coach, bring in another coach, and still expect this GM, this personnel grouping, this quarterback to succeed. I think if you give up on McDaniel, that's it. You're giving up on this iteration of the team. It's time to tear it down and rebuild the entire thing. We tried it with Tannehill. It didn't work. I don't think you try it here. Either McDaniel succeeds with this quarterback and with this personnel group and with this GM, or you tear it down altogether. I mean, it's sad, but it's true. And I don't think we're ready to tear it down right now. You're just not in a position to tear it down right now. And at the end of the day, losing those guys hurt, sure, but they're not the reason we lost. They're not the reason we lost. Connor going down hurt. He's not the reason we lost. He's not the reason we lost the division. The 2 pass rushers going down. It hurts it might be the reason we don't go to a Super Bowl run. They're not the reason we lost the AFC East title. You look at the game, and the injuries we had are not the reason we lost. And this is what I'm saying. Pay attention to these guys. Mark my words. Pay attention to me. And this is one of the reasons I'm going to stay vocal during the offseason, because I got to fight these nonsense narratives. This narrative, just like I told you last year, it would be Tua staying healthy, and it's false narrative. This year, it's going to be the injuries and everybody staying healthy. It's once again a false narrative. You're going to hear all season. Right now, it's just 2 or 3 apologists who are saying this, and most of us are being honest. But you give it 2 weeks. Give it 2 weeks, and the majority of content creators, the majority of reporters, the majority of the beat writers, the majority of the media hype machine, and the majority of the fans are going to start saying and repeating and parroting this false narrative that the injuries are what did us in, and if we get rid of injuries next year and we stay healthy, we're going to be a Super Bowl team. That is a false narrative, because the injuries are not the reason we lost to the Bills, which is not the reason we lost the AFC East title and the 2nd seed, which would have set us up for a more viable run. Injuries are not the main reason, but in 2 weeks, I promise you, in 2 weeks, that is going to be what everybody's saying. It's not going to be true. It's not going to be accurate, but it's going to be what everybody's saying. I'm telling you right now. And you have to fight that false narrative. You got to fight that false narrative, period. No one's going anywhere, and we're running this back next year. But let's have honest conversations about what the season's looking like. And let's have honest conversations about what we're facing and what we can expect. Let's not spread nonsensical false narratives and get everybody repeating and parroting nonsense again. Because I can't stand false narratives. If there's one thing I absolutely hate, it's false narratives. Absolutely hate false narratives. Guys, if you have not done so, smash that subscribe button, click the super thanks, click the super chat, become a member of the channel, click memberships, and check out the options we have. They're very cheap. It's an easy way to support the channel on an ongoing basis, get some really good perks from this channel, and become an official Fury Fam member. And it's a lot. It goes a long way in supporting this channel. Consider becoming a member. Click subscribe. Consider throwing super thanks and super chats to everybody who donated today. Thank you so much for bearing with us. Thank you so much for being a member. Thank you so much for being a part of Fury Fam. Thank you so much, most importantly, for listening and for being a listener and fan of this channel and this show. Remember, guys, you can download every Monday. I'm going to do this from now on. And every Monday, you'll be able to download. If you don't catch the show live on video, this will be available as an audio podcast on all major podcast platforms. Just type in Phin-Addict Fury or type in Larry K. Dolphins, Phin-Addict Fury or Larry K. Dolphins into any search engine, into any major podcast platform, and this will come up as an audio show. You can listen on your way to work. You can listen in the car. You can listen in your headphones, however it best works for you. This will be available as a podcast. Check it out, download it. Click subscribe, become a member. I appreciate all of you very, very, very sincerely. Go back and watch this whole show if you caught it later. Thank you again to all our new subscribers. Thank you again to everybody who donated. A special thanks to all our members. I have more perks coming for you very, very soon. I'll see you guys tomorrow night at 7 p.m. It's me, Lucci, Shake, and G back at it as always. We'll be here to further discuss this season, further discuss what happened this year, and further discuss everything. Make sure you also check out Lucci and Shake on Thursday nights at the happy hour. As the off-season approaches, we're going to have plenty of off-season programming for you guys too, so stay tuned to that as well. I'll talk to you all very soon. Larry K is out.
I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.